if you go into Chrome, there's an AI mode, and you click on AI mode, and you can ask a question. Now, people are generally asking like search engine type questions, like tell me about this, or how was this made, or create an image for me. But you can also say, give me the code to create website that allows for animation and animate a circle or something. So you can kind of start to ask the web browser. So this isn't even using ChatGPT. This is using Chrome. They're putting Google Gemini right into the web browser. And here, it's giving me some HTML. It's giving me some CSS. And the CSS is the part that would do the animation. It's giving me some JavaScript. It's saying that's optional. Okay, that's great. But now what do I do? Like, what do I do at this point, right? So this is where the IDE comes in, the integrated developer environment. Visual Studio Code is the kind of like the place to go when it comes to IDEs. It's like they're the leading one. So if you go to Visual Studio Code, you can download Visual Studio Code and it looks like this. So after I download it, this is essentially what Visual Studio Code looks like. I got a lot of stuff open. I'm going to keep this stuff open. But when you're using these tools, you would go into Visual Studio Code and in the dock, open it up. Now, this is not Visual Studio Code per se, but this is exactly what Visual Studio Code looks like. You open it up and this is the workflow. So if you want to create a website in one of these developer environments, you go to File, you go to New Window, and this is kind of like your project folder. And in the project folder, you open up a folder. If you don't have a folder set for the project, you create a new folder, and I'm going to call this animation site. So this is the folder for your website. You hit create, and then you open up the folder. And now I'm in the project. So this is in my developer environment. So the next step would be to actually create the website. So you're basically just creating an index.html file for the website. So you can go Command N, new, or there's an icon here. You can click on that. You type in index.html, and then you're already set to bring in the code that, in this case, Chrome created the code for me. Let me see if I can go back. So here's what you would call like the boilerplate code. Now, a lot of times you can use keyboard shortcuts. So this is built in before AI even existed. If I wanted to create a website and I want the basic code for the site, I can hit Shift exclamation point and tab, and hold on. Shift exclamation point and tab. It just did it and now it's not doing it. And tab and it's in tab, and then it creates the basic code. So that's the boilerplate code for any website. So just typing an exclamation point and hitting tab creates the code for you. That's always been part of these editors. So the idea of coding assistance has been around before AI. It's just now more integrated. But what I'll do here is I'll grab the code from Google Chrome. So it's basically asking for the script, and then it has this div, and the div is what's going to create the actual animation. So first I'm pasting in the HTML that it gave me, and then I can go back. Now it's giving me something called a style sheet, and I'm going to copy this. And if you look here, there is a reference to style.css. So that basically is the code looking for another file in your project folder called style.css. So I can create a new file, like it's like Command N or what you're used to, and I can type style.css. And then here in style.css, I'm going to paste that other bit of code. You can already see, though, that the developer environment is already thinking for me. And it's saying, if you're new to CSS, that's okay, but that dot circle is already referencing this circle here. So the developer environment is already kind of doing a little bit of coding for me. But I'm going to paste in what I grabbed from Google Chrome, and you can see that circle is here. So basically what this is doing is creating a circle that's 100 pixels in diameter, 100 pixels tall, 100 pixels wide. It's making it blue. And then it's using this animation property is what you would call it, an animation property. And it's going to bounce for 2 seconds, infinitely alternating back and forth. And that's what Google Chrome created. And then you have this keyframes property. So this actually tells you what is going to be animated. And this is going to animate from X. So translate X is the X direction. So I'm going to save this. Now I have some plugins. So if I hit option, if I save this here and oops, and if I go back to the index.html, so now this style is pointing to the style.css. And if I hit option B, I have my circle. It's actually, they did some other changing colors as well. So that's not even in ChatGPT. That's just going into a web browser, hitting AI mode and asking it a question, right? So the browser itself is now generating the code for you using AI. Microsoft is doing the same thing. Even Apple, I think even if you start to ask like Siri, it might give you code. Like, hey, I need some code to help me do this. So if I go into Microsoft 365, you don't see a regular 365 window. Try. It actually it's asking me a question right away. How can I help you? So it's already prompting me for something, and I can say same thing, create an animation of a circle in HTML. So the key here is specifically knowing the language you want first. And so I'm saying HTML, CSS, and I'll just do that. I don't want JavaScript at this point. I want to keep it simple. And I'm just asking Microsoft. This is in now at the back end, it's probably using ChatGPT, but it's like white labeled for me. And then here it's giving me code. Now this time around it's giving me the code all together. And again, there's always like a little copy button somewhere where you can copy the code. So that's their copy button. And now I can go back into the IDE here, go into my index, paste that. It did it differently, but it's still the same. It's giving me a different type of animation because it wasn't specific. So it looks like it's scaling it. It's still 100 by 100. It's still looping in the same way. But this time I put the style sheet in the index.html. So that's fine. Like you can use what's called a style tag to do that. And now it's giving me some animation. So any questions? But I mean, if you guys are not even familiar with HTML, this is a good place to start. Because the next thing you would ask is, well, how do I even use the code? And it will tell you, it should tell you. Like if I go into the Microsoft example, I can be like, okay, that's great. Just that's great. But how do I use it? You just ask it, and just it's giving me some options here. So it's giving me different options, and then it will say like, well, CodePen. What is CodePen? This kind of takes you on your discovery journey with AI. So there's basically a website called CodePen that will let you upload code to it. It acts like an ID. But there's like kind of like interaction that occurs, right? You're trying to figure out how things work. So kind of back to the Muybridge example, like the Muybridge example I made was very complicated. Like I didn't fully understand the code that it was giving me. So I kind of had to like take a step back and think in terms of what I know. Like how much knowledge do I have of coding? Like I know HTML and CSS. I don't really know React.js and I really don't know Python. But what I do know is that for coding purposes, you could create very simple interactive animations in different ways. So basically what I wanted to do was scale back and say, okay, this is great, but take me to like the most simple way to do something. Now I'll kind of show you that process. But before I do that, I just want to talk about this. Okay, so this is Visual Studio Code for all intents and purposes, but you see it's called Windsurf. So what is happening with these developer environments? Microsoft owns Visual Studio Code, but they have some open source agreements with third parties where they can take Visual Studio Code, use the shell, and then integrate it with other tools. So what's happening is this company, Windsurf, is basically integrating Visual Studio Code with ChatGPT and other AI models. So you can go into Windsurf. You don't even have to go into ChatGPT or Chrome or Microsoft. When you create your new window, you open up your new window and you can say, let's generate a project. And then it's going to ask you for a prompt. And then you can say, let's make a website that creates a circle that is animated in scale and turns. Yeah, I mean, you can get super specific, blue, green, and it's going to have you select the folder. So I got to select my folder. And here, when I select the folder, like I don't have a folder ready, so I'm just gonna create a new folder and call it animate site two, create, select it, and then I guess I can hit enter. And on the, you'll see here, it starts to generate. So what it has, this is in the way. So what it has here is your code generation in the main window. When it's green, that means it's new code. And then on the right is the prompt conversation that it had based on what you asked it. So it generated the index, it generated the style sheet, it has this changing scale, it has the color change. I can see the color from green to blue. It tells you what it's doing, and then you basically hit accept. So it generated the whole site for you. Now, I don't, if you have zero knowledge of HTML, then yeah, you just need to know about these IDEs and you go to windsurf.com, you download Windsurf, like here's the website, and you start, it's windsurf.ai and you download the ID. And let's say you're like, I need to create a portfolio, you know, and this is good when you don't want to go to Wix and you kind of want to kind of learn the whole process. And it's like, I need a portfolio site for my work. Or you could even say like, I mean, Wix will let you do that, but you want to start selling stuff and you want authentication and you don't want to use Etsy anymore and you want to have your own storefront, or you want to use Etsy and have your own storefront at the same time. So you use this, it will connect you to Stripe. It will tell you how to do authentication. It will let you create your backend database. It will tell you the tools you need all within the development environment. So you don't even have to leave to go into chat GPT. So I could ask it like other things like now you look at it here just to see it in action. You know, that's the new pulsating circle. But then you can start to ask it all sorts of stuff. And you could say like, can you help me create authentication so users can sign up? So sign up. And then it will start to do that. And it will actually generate the code, but I'll actually tell you, it'll give you options like, okay, it's going to create a backend. So it's using the JavaScript. It's starting to use other tools. So one tool is Node.js. It's going to create the ability to have a database. And you can see it populate the code here to build what you want. And it's all going through that process.
When you're speaking, when you're asking for what you need this website to do, can you import an image, a visual for it to say, I want, a box at the top.
Yeah,
That's going to be my header.
right. Yeah, exactly. You could say, I'm going to say accept this here. And then I'm going to say, and then I mean, it's generating a ton of code for this, but I could hit the plus sign and upload an image and I'll just find a random, I'm going to say, can you make this image the header? And it's still in its process of generating. So authentication for a site, it's like it's a time consuming process. Question?
Yeah, I was wondering, this is like very similar to something that I use called Cursor AI.
Right.
What would you say is like better though? Like, would you still say like Visual Studio Code is like a better AI environment overall for?
This is this is actually Windsurf I'm using right now. And I also use Cursor as well. And they're all pretty much the same.
Okay.
There's no, like, from what I see, they're doing the exact same thing. They're like two companies competing with each other with the same idea. There are other ones that are more, that are less, I could say, computer science looking focused and more of, hey, what do you want to make today? And it's doing the same thing. We're getting the code. So one is called Bolt AI. There's another one called Replit. There's another one called Lovable. Like Mark Cuban is an investor of Lovable. It's like these are all billion-dollar companies now. I mean, there are a bunch of guys maybe coming out of Stanford who's like, yeah, let's put the AI in this IDE and let's have Microsoft let us use their Visual Studio Code interface, right? But they're all essentially, they're basically all pointing to ChatGPT or Claude AI is another model, or Gemini to do the coding and then bringing that into the IDE environment. Because previously you would have to go to ChatGPT, generate the code, go into Visual Studio Code, and then keep on going back and forth. They brought it all together. The difference between Cursor and really Windsurf is Cursor has the ability, this is when you start to do more coding, you're using the terminal. So you're using more terminal command lines. And so Cursor does a lot more with the command line where you can prompt the command line to do things for you as well. where it kind of does it with Windsurf, but Cursor does it better, in my opinion. Like I work with Cursor, like when you want to send something to GitHub, you can just ask Cursor, can you add, push, and commit all at once? And it'll just do it all at once. Where with for somebody with Windsurf, I say the same thing, first do it each one separately, and there's no need to do it separately. Like, but it's like a tiny minor thing, like super minor. But they're essentially the same. They're all doing the same thing. They're like companies are now using the main ChatGPT models and Google's model and Facebook's model, and they're using it as basically their backend AI model, and then they have a wrapper up front. So when you see an AI product, it's all kind of going to the same source, basically. And so there's like AI tools that will create PowerPoint presentations for you, but you could just go into ChatGPT and create the PowerPoint presentation. But that's what's being sold. I have a whole list I can send you guys, like literally hundreds of AI tools that are coming out. And that's kind of like the bubble that's forming. Like everybody is creating their AI system, trying to make millions off of ChatGPT that's like making maybe trillions. Well, it's NVIDIA that's making the trillions. First, you have NVIDIA feeding the GPUs to ChatGPT, and then you have all of this whole ecosystem. And they even say like the economy right now, the reason why the economy is doing good at all is because of this whole AI ecosystem. Carrying, yes. And if something happens to that, things are not going to look good.
With these different tools, some are going to fall to the wayside because there's going to be duplication.
Yeah, there'll definitely be duplication. Now, are people gonna know that though? Like, you're gonna find the AI tool of your choice. Like, for example, for PowerPoint generation, there's something called Beautiful AI, and I think there's another one called Tome AI. And I use one called Manus, which I think is really good. But I've used them all, and they all essentially kind of do the same thing. But is your average consumer gonna be like savvy enough to like know that these are different tools? Yeah, yeah. It's how many Google AdWords you buy, and how much social media marketing you're doing, and where does your ad show up in like Instagram and TikTok. So yeah, I mean, they are all doing pretty much the same thing, except you would never know that unless you're like deeply kind of doing all this research and trying the tools. But at the end of the day, you could probably just go into ChatGPT and do everything, right? Because essentially that's what they're doing. They're like, yeah, they're finding like a niche and they're advertising that niche, but they're not opening up that tool to do other things besides what the niche was. Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting.